Ladies and gentlemen, respect is not something you demand. It's something you train people to give. And one of the fastest ways to gain respect for your boundaries is to communicate them clearly, firmly, and consistently. Here's the mistake many people make. They think people should just know their limits. But silence doesn't set boundaries. It only creates confusion. If you want people to respect where the line is, you've got to draw the line. And when you draw it, don't do it with anger. Don't do it with guilt. Do it with calm confidence. Think of it like locking your front door. You're not punishing anyone for walking up to your house. You're just protecting what matters inside. The key is consistency. If you tell someone, I don't take calls after 1000 p.m., but then you keep picking up the phone, your boundary doesn't exist. It's just a wish. Boundaries don't work because you said them once. They work because you live by them. And here's the truth. People take their cues from you. If you don't respect your own boundaries, why should they? Self-respect is the foundation of all respect. When you value your time, your energy, and your peace, others learn to value it too. So here's the simple shift. State your boundary clearly, calmly, and then follow through every single time. Do this, and people will respect your boundaries instantly. Not because you forced them, but because you taught them how. Respect starts with clarity. People can't respect boundaries they don't understand. And too often we assume that others should simply know where our limits are, as if they can read our minds or sense our discomfort without us ever saying a word. The truth is, people are not mind readers, and expecting them to just figure it out is one of the fastest ways to set yourself up for frustration. Clarity is the bridge between what you expect and what others can respect. Without it, boundaries remain invisible lines that only you know exist. And invisible lines are crossed every single time. Clarity means communicating directly, calmly, and without hesitation. It means saying, I don't share my passwords, instead of hinting at it or hoping someone respects your privacy on their own. It means saying, I'm not available to talk after 9:00 p.m., instead of silently getting annoyed when someone calls late. When you choose clarity, you remove the guesswork. You take away the excuses. And most importantly, you teach people exactly how to treat you. But clarity isn't just about words. It's about consistency. If you say, I need space, but then you keep responding when someone pushes, you're sending mixed signals. Mixed signals create confusion, and confusion erases respect. When you're clear and consistent, you set a standard that doesn't waver depending on mood, guilt, or pressure. It becomes a principle, not a preference. Clarity also requires courage. Sometimes we hold back from stating our boundaries because we're afraid of disappointing others, afraid of seeming selfish, or afraid of conflict. But let me tell you this, people will respect you more for being clearer than they ever will for being vague. When you speak your truth kindly and directly, you may not always get applause, but you will earn respect. And respect is worth far more than temporary approval. Think about how much easier life becomes when clarity is present. Misunderstandings shrink, resentments fade, expectations become realistic. People know what to expect from you, and you know you've done your part in expressing what matters. That doesn't guarantee everyone will like your boundaries, but it guarantees they will understand them. And understanding is the first step toward respect. If clarity is missing, boundaries turn into unspoken rules. And unspoken rules always lead to broken trust. You might feel taken advantage of, but in reality, you never gave others a fair chance to respect your needs in the first place. Clarity is what makes respect possible. Without it, boundaries are nothing more than wishful thinking. So if you want people to respect your boundaries instantly, start with clarity. Be willing to speak directly. Hold steady in your truth and show others that your lines are not suggestions, but standards. Respect follows clarity the way shadows follow light. When you make yourself clear, you give people the gift of understanding. And with understanding comes the respect you've been waiting for. Silence is not strength. Unspoken expectations lead to disappointment, not respect. Many people confuse staying silent with being strong. They believe that holding it all in, never voicing their needs, and tolerating disrespect somehow shows maturity or resilience. But the reality is silence doesn't protect your boundaries. it erases them. Silence tells people what you're doing is okay, even when deep down you know it's not. And when you allow silence to speak for you, you give away your power without even realizing it. Think about this: when someone crosses a line and you stay quiet, what message are you really sending? You're not teaching them to respect you. You're teaching them that their behavior is acceptable. And once they've learned that lesson, they'll repeat it again and again. Not out of cruelty, but because they believe you're fine with it. That's how silence turns into disappointment. You end up resenting others for doing what you never told them not to do. The frustration builds, not because people are intentionally ignoring you, but because they never knew the boundary existed in the first place. True strength is not measured by how much you can endure in silence. It's measured by your willingness to speak up with calm confidence. Strength is saying this doesn't work for me, or I'm not comfortable with that, without exploding, without guilt, and without apology for protecting yourself. It's easy to think silence avoids conflict, but the truth is silence only delays conflict, while guaranteeing inner turmoil. Words spoken with clarity can create temporary discomfort, but unspoken expectations create long-term damage. We often stay silent because we fear the outcome. We don't want to hurt someone's feelings. We don't want to seem rude, or we worry about rejection. But holding back doesn't prevent pain, it guarantees it. When you suppress your needs, you betray yourself. And betrayal from within is always worse than the possibility of rejection from others. Because here's the truth: people can adjust to your boundaries, but you can't adjust to a lifetime of being unheard. When you replace silence with honesty, you give others a chance to rise to the occasion. Some will respect you more because of it. Others may push back, but that pushback reveals who was never truly invested in respecting you in the first place. Either way, speaking up creates clarity, and clarity always leads to freedom. Respect doesn't grow in silence. It grows in truth, in communication, and in the courage to say what needs to be said. Silence might feel safe in the moment, but it only leads to disappointment later. If you want respect, you have to give people the opportunity to respect you. And that starts with using your voice. So the next time you're tempted to stay quiet, remember this: silence might avoid a moment of discomfort, but speaking up will protect a lifetime of respect. Firmness without anger. Boundaries are best communicated calmly, not emotionally. Many people believe that in order to set a boundary, they need to raise their voice, show their frustration, or explode to finally be taken seriously. But here's the truth: anger doesn't create respect, it creates resistance. When you communicate with anger, people focus more on your tone than your words. They stop listening to what you're asking for, and instead react to how you're delivering it. That's why calm firmness is far more powerful than emotional outbursts. Firmness is not about being harsh or cold. It's about being steady, clear, and consistent in what you say and how you say it. When you calmly say, "No, I can't do that," and then stick to it, your boundaries stand strong without needing extra volume or intensity. Firmness shows that you mean what you say, while calmness shows that you are in control of yourself. And that combination commands respect far more effectively than anger ever could. Anger often comes from waiting too long to speak up. When we let people cross our boundaries repeatedly without saying anything, resentment builds up like pressure in a bottle. Eventually, it explodes, and instead of calmly setting the standard, we lash out. The problem is, an angry boundary doesn't look like strength. It looks like weakness because it shows we lost control. On the other hand, addressing issues early and calmly keeps us from ever reaching that breaking point. A calm boundary draws a clear line without sparking unnecessary conflict. For example, saying, "I won't be available after work hours," in a steady tone is far more effective than shouting, "Stop bothering me," after hours. The message is the same, but the delivery makes the difference. Calm firmness invites understanding, while anger provokes defensiveness. A firmness also requires follow-through. If you calmly set a boundary but bend as soon as someone pushes, your words lose weight. But when you stay steady without anger, without guilt, you teach people that your boundaries are not negotiable. Calm repetition and consistent action build credibility, and credibility is what makes others take you seriously. It's important to remember that firmness without anger is not about suppressing your emotions. It's about leading them. It's normal to feel upset when boundaries are crossed, but reacting with calm control shows strength. It shows that your peace is not up for negotiation, and that no one else gets to dictate your reactions. In the end, people respect those who respect themselves. When you set boundaries with calm firmness, you project confidence, stability, and clarity. You don't need to yell. You don't need to prove your point through anger. Your steady presence speaks louder than raised voices ever could. Boundaries enforced with calm firmness last longer, carry more weight, and build deeper respect. So remember this, it's not the loudest voice that gets respect. It's the one that stays calm, clear, and unwavering no matter what. Consistency builds credibility. Boundaries must be reinforced through action, not just words. It's one thing to say what your boundaries are, but it's another to live by them. Words without follow-through are just suggestions, and people don't respect suggestions the way they respect standards. Consistency is the bridge that turns your spoken boundaries into lived reality. And without it, your credibility crumbles. When you set a boundary, you're essentially saying, this is the line. This is how I expect to be treated. But if you keep shifting that line depending on your mood, your guilt, or someone else's persistence, then what you've said loses its weight. For example, if you tell someone, I can't lend money, but every time they push you give in, you've taught them that your words don't matter. Once your words lose their power, people stop taking your boundaries seriously. Consistency is what proves you mean what you say. It communicates strength without needing anger and authority, without needing control. When you stick to your limits every time, people begin to realize they cannot manipulate, pressure, or guilt you into bending. That realization builds respect, not because you forced it, but because you showed through action that your boundaries are not up for debate. The challenge with consistency is that it often feels uncomfortable. Saying no again and again can feel repetitive, even harsh, especially with people who resist. But every time you hold your line, you're building credibility brick by brick. The first no might feel shaky. The second feels a little firmer. By the 5th or 10th time, your consistency becomes your reputation. And your reputation is what protects you. Inconsistency, on the other hand, is what erodes respect. If people know they can sometimes get a yes out of you after enough pressure, they will keep pushing. Not because they don't care, but because you've trained them that persistence works. But when you're consistent, persistence loses its power. The conversation ends sooner, the respect grows stronger, and your boundaries become unshakable. Consistency is not about being rigid with everything in life. It's about being reliable with what matters most. It's about aligning your actions with your values and teaching others that your words carry weight. Over time, people stop testing you because they already know the answer. They stop questioning your limits because your consistency has already answered for you. The beauty of consistency is that it doesn't just train others, it also trains you. It builds confidence within yourself. Each time you reinforce a boundary, you remind yourself that you are capable of protecting your peace. That self-trust becomes the foundation of every future boundary you set. At the end of the day, boundaries are not just about what you say in the moment. They're about what you consistently live out day after day. People respect consistency because consistency is truth in action. So remember this, anyone can say a boundary once, but only those who live it earn lasting respect. Self-respect sets the tone. If you don't honor your own limits, no one else will. Respect is contagious, but it always starts with the way you treat yourself. When you minimize your own needs, when you bend your own rules, when you dismiss your own boundaries, you're signaling to the world that others can do the same. People take cues from you. If you show them that your time, your peace, and your energy don't matter to you, they'll follow your lead and treat them as disposable too. But when you set the tone through self-respect, you teach others how to engage with you without ever having to say a word. Self-respect is the foundation of every healthy boundary. It's not just about saying no to others. It's about saying yes to yourself. That means recognizing that your limits are valid, your needs are important, and your well-being is worth protecting. Too often people ignore their own limits out of guilt, out of fear of disappointing someone, or out of the desire to be liked. But what good is being liked if it comes at the cost of being drained, disrespected, or disregarded? Self-respect means refusing to abandon yourself just to keep others comfortable. Think of it this way: if you keep allowing people to interrupt you, cancel on you, or take advantage of you,
What you're really doing is teaching them that their comfort is more valuable than your dignity. But when you hold to your limits, you flip the script. You show that your time has value, your presence has weight, and your boundaries have meaning. And once you establish that standard within yourself, others are far more likely to rise to meet it. Self-respect is also about consistency in the small choices. Do you keep promises to yourself? Do you say you'll rest, but then overwork? Do you tell yourself you'll stop tolerating certain behavior, but then let it slide? Every time you break your own rules, you weaken your self-trust. But every time you honor your word to yourself, you strengthen. And when that inner trust grows, your outer confidence naturally follows. People notice that kind of strength. It commands respect without you having to demand it. The truth is, no one else can do this part for you. You can't wait for others to suddenly treat you better before you decide to respect yourself. It starts with you. When you prioritize your limits, when you honor your values, when you refuse to betray yourself for approval, you set the tone for every interaction in your life. At the end of the day, boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about teaching others how to treat what you already respect in yourself. If you don't take your own limits seriously, no one else. But if you do, if you live them out with consistency and confidence, you create a standard that no one can ignore. Self-respect is the seed and respect from others is the fruit. And the moment you start honoring yourself, you set the tone for how the entire world will respond to you. Boundaries are protection, not punishment. They are meant to preserve peace, not control others. One of the biggest misunderstandings about boundaries is the belief that they are walls we build to shut people out, or weapons we use to control behavior. In reality, healthy boundaries are neither of those things. They are shields, not swords. They are not about forcing someone else to change. They are about protecting your own well-being. A boundary says this is what I will allow in my life, and this is what I will not. It's not about punishing the other person. It's about taking responsibility for your peace. When boundaries are misunderstood as punishment, people feel attacked. They think you're trying to restrict them, manipulate them, or make them pay for what they've done. That's not the purpose of a boundary. The purpose is self-care. For example, if you tell someone, I won't stay in conversations where I'm yelled at, you're not punishing them for yelling. You're protecting yourself from unnecessary harm. The distinction matters because punishment is about control, but protection is about freedom. Boundaries give you the freedom to walk away, the freedom to choose peace, and the freedom to create an environment that supports your value. The moment you use a boundary as a weapon, it loses its purpose. Saying, if you don't do this, then I'll never speak to you again, is not a boundary, it's a threat. True boundaries don't seek to control the other person's behavior. They simply outline what you will do if your needs are not respected. The shift is subtle but powerful. A punishment says, I'll hurt you if you don't comply. A boundary says, I'll protect myself if you cross this line. One is about dominance. The other is about dignity. Boundaries also serve to preserve relationships, not destroy them. Without them, resentment builds and relationships eventually collapse under the weight of unspoken frustration. But when you put boundaries in place, you give the relationship a chance to survive with mutual respect. You're saying, I value this connection enough to protect it by protecting myself, far from being selfish. That's one of the most respectful things you can do for both people involved. It's also important to understand that not everyone will like your boundary. Some will push back not because you're punishing them, but because they benefited from your lack of limits. And that's okay. Boundaries are not meant to please others. They're meant to keep you grounded in your own truth. The people who truly value you will adjust. The ones who don't will reveal themselves. Either way, your peace stays intact. At the end of the day, boundaries are not cages for others. They are doors for yourself. They keep you safe. They preserve your energy, and they allow you to live with clarity instead of chaos. They are not about pushing people away but about drawing a healthy line that keeps respect intact. So remember this, boundaries are not punishment. They are protection. And when you honor them as such, you create a life where peace is preserved, respect is earned, and relationships are healthier than ever. When you put it all together, boundaries are not about building walls, shutting people out, or demanding control. They are about clarity, about having the courage to speak instead of staying silent, about standing firm without anger, about staying consistent so your words carry weight. About honoring yourself first, so others know how to honor you. And about protecting your peace, instead of punishing others. Boundaries are not a sign of weakness. They are proof of self-respect. And when you live them out with calm confidence, people will learn to respect you instantly. Not because you forced them to, but because you showed them how. Respect always begins with you, and the way you carry yourself sets the tone for how the world responds. So protect your peace, stand by your truth, and never apologize for valuing yourself.